February 2022. Ukraine had approximately 10 domestic drone manufacturers, almost no combat drone production, no industrial capacity, no supply chain, no doctrine. 4 years later, Ukraine produces more drones per year than every NATO country combined. Not more than some NATO countries, more than all of them, together. And now, a country still fighting for its survival is exporting its expertise to the wealthiest oil states on Earth. Signed billion-dollar defense deals with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE in a single 48-hour trip. Deployed its drone warfare experts to protect American military bases in Jordan, and simultaneously struck Russian oil terminals on the Baltic Sea 900 kilometers from its border, costing Russia nearly $1 billion in lost oil revenue in a single week. This is not a story about Ukraine. This is a story about what happens when a nation has no choice but to out-innovate or disappear.
Let's establish the scale. Before the full-scale invasion in February 2022, Ukraine's drone industry was negligible. Today, 4 million drones produced in 2025, according to Bloomberg and the Atlantic Council, more than any NATO country, likely more than the entire alliance combined. 8 million FPV drones per year. That is the current production capacity as of January 2026, according to Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. 500 drone manufacturers operating in Ukraine, up from 10 before the war. Monthly FPV production from 20,000 in summer 2024 to over 200,000 by mid-2025. That is a 900% increase in 12 months. And the target for 2026, 7 million drones. In 2025 alone, Ukrainian FPV and bomber drones carried out 819,737 confirmed strikes, every single one verified by drone video footage. That is not an estimate. That is a verified number with video evidence for each strike.
To understand why this matters, you have to understand what these drones did to the Russian military. For 100 years, artillery was the king of the battlefield, the weapon that caused more casualties than any other. The reason armies dug trenches, the reason logistics was everything. Ukraine changed that. Ukrainian commanders now attribute 75 to 80% of all battlefield casualties to drone operations. Not artillery, not missiles, drones. A main battle tank worth millions of dollars, years to build, requiring a crew of 4, can be destroyed by a $1,000 FPV drone piloted by a soldier sitting in a bunker a kilometer away. Russia's own military medical journal confirmed that 75% of its battlefield casualties in the Ukraine war are now drone-inflicted. In December 2025 alone, Ukrainian drones killed or seriously injured 33,019 Russian soldiers, verified on camera. That number is significant for a specific reason. Russia recruits approximately 30,000 to 35,000 new soldiers every month, which means in December 2025, for the first time since the war began, Ukraine's drones were killing Russian soldiers faster than Russia could recruit replacements. The industrial math of warfare had flipped. But the story does not end with conventional FPV drones. Ukraine is not standing still. It is innovating at a pace that no defense contractor in the world can match, because it is innovating under fire, every week, against a real enemy, with real consequences. The latest development, fiber-optic FPV drones. A fiber-optic drone is connected to its operator by a hair-thin cable of glass fiber, not a radio signal, not GPS, not Bluetooth, a cable, which means it cannot be jammed, it cannot be spoofed, it cannot be hijacked. Russia's entire electronic warfare infrastructure, the sophisticated jamming systems deployed across the front, cannot touch it. Ukrainian company Tashka has demonstrated a fiber-optic FPV drone with a 50-kilometer cable, 50 kilometers, through a war zone, on a thread thinner than a human hair. And they are adding AI. Not theoretical AI, AI that has been trained on the millions of confirmed strikes from 4 years of active combat. Real data, real targets, real results. This is the gap between Ukraine's AI-assisted drones and every other system in the world. Ukraine has the combat data. While the world focused on the Iran conflict, Ukraine opened a second strategic front, one that nobody predicted: Russia's oil infrastructure. In February 2026, Ukrainian drones struck a Lukoil refinery 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine's border, the longest confirmed drone strike in the history of warfare. Then, in late March 2026, Ukraine launched the most intensive campaign against Russian energy infrastructure since the war began. Target: Russia's Baltic Sea oil ports. Ust-Luga, handling 700,000 barrels of oil per day. Primorsk, Russia's main Baltic oil export hub. 5 strikes in 5 days. The result? Russia's total oil exports fell by 43% in the week of March 22nd to 29th, from 4.07 million barrels per day to 2.32 million barrels per day. Only 22 tankers loaded in the entire week, compared to 37 the previous week. The cost to Russia? Approximately $970 million in lost revenue, in 1 week, from 5 drone strikes. This was not accidental. Ukraine understood something that most analysts missed. Russia funds its war on oil revenue. If you want to stop the war, you stop the money. And the money travels through 2 ports on the Baltic Sea. Here is where the story becomes geopolitical. On February 28, 2026, Operation Epic Fury began. Iran launched waves of Shahed drones against Gulf states, American bases, and oil infrastructure, and Gulf military commanders found themselves facing a threat they had no answer to. Expensive Patriot interceptors at $3.7 million each were being used to shoot down $20,000 Shahed drones. The economics were ruinous, the stockpiles were finite, and Iran had thousands more drones ready to launch. Who had been facing this exact problem for 4 years? Who had developed the cheapest, fastest, most effective counter-drone systems in the world? Who had trained hundreds of operators in the exact tactics needed to defeat Shahed-class drones? Ukraine. Within weeks of the Iran war starting, Ukrainian President Zelensky toured the Gulf. March 27, 2026, Ukraine signed a 10-year defense cooperation deal with Saudi Arabia. March 28, 2026, Ukraine signed a 10-year defense cooperation deal with Qatar, including joint defense industry projects, co-production facilities, and technological partnerships. March 28, 2026, Ukraine agreed in principle to a similar deal with the UAE. In 48 hours, 3 of the world's wealthiest nations signed decade-long defense contracts with a country that is still fighting for its life. And not just paper agreements. More than 200 Ukrainian counter-drone experts are already deployed on the ground in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, protecting Gulf oil infrastructure from Iranian drone attacks. Another 30 are heading to Kuwait and Jordan. Ukraine's drone warfare operators, the people who perfected these tactics under Russian bombardment, are now defending Saudi Aramco oil fields. The Ukrainian CEO of U-Force described his sea drone, the Magura, being adapted for Gulf waters, stations along Gulf coastlines, intercepting Iranian drones over water, with software requiring minimal personnel. Ukraine is not just selling hardware, it is selling the operating system of 21st century air defense.
Here is the strategic insight that makes all of this significant. Ukraine did not build a drone industry because it wanted to. It built a drone industry because its soldiers were dying. And the innovation that came from that existential pressure produced something no defense contractor could deliberately engineer: a complete ecosystem. Not just the drone, the operator training, the maintenance protocol, the signals intelligence, the electronic warfare countermeasures, the AI targeting systems, the fiber-optic guidance, the interceptor drones, the maritime variants, the software that runs all of it, and the data. 4 years of combat data. Every successful strike recorded, every failure analyzed, every countermeasure tested against a real enemy that immediately adapts. When Ukraine signed deals with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, it was not selling weapons. It was selling a 4-year education in the most advanced drone warfare ever conducted. As the expert from Center for New American Security told Breaking Defense, Ukraine can share its rapid innovation cycle, the ability to build, test, fail, adapt, and redeploy within weeks instead of years. No American defense contractor can offer that. No Israeli firm. No Chinese company, because nobody else has been doing this under live fire for 4 years. Let's step back and understand what has happened here. In February 2022, Ukraine was an aid recipient, dependent on American weapons, dependent on European money, dependent on Allied goodwill. In April 2026, Ukraine is deploying its military experts to protect American bases in Jordan. Ukraine is signing billion-dollar defense export contracts with Gulf petrostates. Ukraine's technology is being licensed for production in Germany, manufactured under license in the UK, co-produced with Romania. And Ukraine's drone strikes are costing Russia $1 billion a week in oil revenue. The country that Russia tried to erase from the map has become the world's most battle-tested defense technology exporter. The country that needed everything from everyone now has something that everyone needs. And the reason is simple. War is the ultimate quality test for military technology. You cannot simulate what happens when 10,000 drones attack you every month for 4 years. You cannot train for the pace of innovation that occurs when the alternative is national extinction. Ukraine did not choose to become the world's drone superpower. It was forced to.
And in being forced, it built something that the world is only beginning to understand. The strategic forecast. Ukraine's export deals with Gulf states are just the beginning. Discussions are already underway with Kuwait, Jordan, Bahrain, and Oman. Germany is training its Bundeswehr with Ukrainian drone warfare experts. Ukraine has opened 10 defense export centers across Europe. Production targets for 2026, 7 million drones. And the technology is accelerating. Fiber-optic drones that no jammer can touch. AI systems trained on 820,000 confirmed strikes. Sea drones adapted for Gulf waters. Interceptor drones costing $2,500 defending against $20,000 attack drones, instead of $3.7 million Patriot missiles. The math of air defense has been permanently changed. And the country that changed it is not America, not Israel, not China. It is a nation of 37 million people that spent 4 years with no choice but to innovate. War is a terrible teacher, but Ukraine has learned every lesson it had to teach, and now it is exporting the curriculum.